This is CounselCast, and I'm your host, Karin Conroy, your marketing co-counsel. In every episode, I discuss marketing topics with experts who answer your questions and help your law firm achieve next-level results. Here's today's guest.
Hi, I'm Joaby Parker. I'm founder and CEO of Cover 3 Growth Partners, and I spend my life helping people stop wasting marketing dollars and grow based off really sound, solid marketing principles.
Awesome. Okay, I want to come back to this idea of wasting marketing dollars because if you are introducing yourself using that, you have got to have experience of taking in clients who are currently wasting a lot of marketing dollars, as I do all the time. And I feel like it creates a lot of fear around marketing, and people get kind of frozen in making decisions because they're assuming there's a certain amount of waste. But before we get into that, the title for today's show is Creative Strategy Meets Law Firm Growth, Lessons in Scaling to $100 million from a Fractional CMO. So this is a long title. I feel like we were just like halfway through the episode when I just said the title. But Joaby has got this amazing combination of being a fractional CMO, which is a chief marketing officer, and offering that kind of a service, which is kind of a relatively new idea, but also having amazing growth. You've really grown certain companies to a really mentionable amount. So we're not just talking about it in theory. We're talking about the practice of it, how it works, and how it worked for you to have this kind of success. So first, thank you for being here. And I am looking forward to this conversation.
Oh, thanks for having me. It's really cool to be a part of it.
Awesome. Okay, so first, let's talk about what is a fractional CMO, because there's a lot of different definitions out there. And I've talked to a lot of people that do it in different ways. So what does that mean for you?
Well, I think a lot of people can get confused when you talk about a fractional CMO compared to like a marketing director and things like that. But really, to define a fractional CMO is to really take an entire step backwards.
Yeah.
Whereas I would define a marketing director would be somebody who is very tactical, understands the strategy of where the company needs to go and what they need to be doing, and they're making sure that the stuff is getting done, right?
Yes.
The website's getting designed, the trade show booth is getting designed, the flyers and the ads are being designed, and a marketing director does just that, is directing all of those. A CMO should be at a level that is a C-suite level.
Yeah.
They should actually be taking even a way further step back before a marketing director.
Yeah.
Understanding like on the horizon trends that are coming and being able to strategically position your company through creative, through messaging and advertising, so that as trends come on the horizon, you're on the front of them and that you are able to break through the clutter of all your competition. And that's where I think a CMO also is the one that kind of puts together the team, like the marketing director, the designers, the ad agency, or media buying agencies, things like that. Yeah. That's a CMO role as compared to like a marketing director.
Okay. So I like to say that if you're not thinking about your marketing in terms of a year, if you're especially, we're somewhat at the beginning of the year at this point, and if you are not thinking a year out, so I guess it doesn't really matter what time of the year you start thinking about it, but a lot of people are thinking at the beginning of the year, and they're thinking, like the next quarter, or sometimes, 6 months or whatever. But for me, we start our like smallest number when we start planning is a year. How do you start, like in terms of thinking about a plan? Do you typically start with a year, or where does that start?
We go 292.
What's that?
Okay, so we go 2 years. Where do you want to be in 2 years? In order to get there, what do we need to get done in the next 90 days?
Oh, nice.
And in order to get there, to get to the next 90 days, what do we need to do in the next 2 weeks?
Oh, I love that.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. All right. So it gives you a real urgent kind of task.
Absolutely.
That's tied with a goal that's going to be measured in 90 days. Yeah. That's tied with the longer term 2-year goal.
Yeah.
I love that.
And credit to our buddy, Grant Cardone, with the 10X rule, right? So
yes,
that really helps us of like exactly where we're going to be in 2 years, where we want to be. It just really helps us realize that right now is the time to be acting, and there's real urgency to the tasks that are on our desk right now.
I think that's great because it's hard to take, when I first started talking about this, we were talking about a year's plan, and it's hard to look at that first year, or in your case, 2 years, and then say, okay, what does that mean for today? So is the Grant Cardone book that you're talking about, 10x is better than 2x, or I think I got a word in
it's
there.
just the 10x rule.
Oh, okay. Because I just wanted to mention that because I think that's in our library. That's a different guest has mentioned that too. So if you want to read that book, we've got a review of that. Okay. So first, give me some examples of what that 2-year goal looks like, because I think a lot of people assume that means financial, but it doesn't always mean like we want to be at a certain financial goal, right?
Right. I mean, we definitely try to put a financial metric within it.
Sure.
But in order to, accomplish that financial metric, there's usually a lot of other metrics within there. I've been doing this for a long time. This is the second agency that I've started. This one I've started in 2010. And so I have a lot of experience in a lot of different industries. So, law is one of them. But each one of those financial goals usually surrounds, some other things. Like for growing law firms, you need to have so many partners that can handle so much work, and each partner needs to be responsible for so many clients and things like that in order to grow. So, if we just said, hey, in 2 years, we want to, let's say we want to double our sales in 1 year and then double that in 2, right? We're definitely going to have to say, okay, well, we've got 4 partners now. If we double, that's 8, and then double, that's, maybe 15 to 16 partners.
Right.
Okay, we need to really start taking actions in the next 90 days. What actions are we taking in order to attract the kind of partners that can bring clients with them and things like that?
Yeah.
And that can handle the kind of cases that we do. So,
and how would that play out in terms of like a marketing plan? Let's just keep going down that same example, because I think that's a good one. We want to, they start with the revenue goal, but, what is it going to take to meet that revenue goal? I think that's a good example where we're going to need this many more partners and whatever. But then how does that happen in terms of, I'm picturing a whole team sitting around a conference table and saying, okay, here's where we're at. It's 2025. By 2027, we want to double this and whatever. But there's the marketing person sitting there. And how do they sit there and start translating that into what they're going to do in, like your example, in 90 days and then in the next 2 weeks?
Awesome question, by the way.
Thank you.
So, you're welcome. For that law firm, if we say, okay, well, in the next 90 days, if we have 4 partners and in a year we want 8, okay? In the next 90 days, we want 1 more.
Yeah.
So in order to do that, first of all, one of the biggest pillars is we have to make sure that we're constantly bringing in new clients and that we have a predictable system of doing that, right? That's in every business. Without predictable and a system for lead generation, either you're always going to be doing this, or eventually you're going to be in big trouble. I remember when I started my first agency, like 20 years ago now, I bought a book called Managing Advertising Agencies, and I can't remember who the author was, but the very first sentence I've never forgot. Okay. And it was, every day that goes by, or you need to know that every day that goes by is 1 day closer to losing every client you have.
Oh,
Yeah. And if you understand that and you have a system, then you can prepare for that. And that's really similar with law firms. To understand that we won't be working for someone forever. So we constantly have to do that. So in order to attract more partners, right, we need to show that we can attract clientele. And then on the side
is it a place that partners want to come to? So like evaluate all of the things, evaluate your intake, evaluate everything. Imagine you're talking to a potential partner and they come to your website and it's 12 years old. I mean, gross. Who wants to work at a place that hasn't even thought about their website in 12 years?
Oh, exactly. It's void of video. Yeah. It's void of, like you said, you can tell that it's like old graphics, old design style.
Yeah.
Then that in turn, usually you're going to attract partners probably, from a regional area, probably close to you. And so what are you doing in the community? What are you doing PR wise? And what are you doing with your advertising, whether it's paid social, CTV, or even local or outdoor? Law firms still do really well with outdoor. What are you doing to create not just top of mind awareness? I think that's a little bit overused, but targeted top of mind awareness, but also just an aura of like, man, that firm is solid. Like if I'm a lawyer, I'd be like, that would be awesome to work with those guys. And so
Yes.
you have to kind of think about all of that at the same time as you're doing
Yeah.
your advertising.
So when we look at all those pieces and try to figure out, because there is this need, and this is only the like marketing side of your law firm, there's this need to look at a lot of different pieces at the same time. And so typically what we will do is go back to the marketing funnel kind of format. And a lot of people in the last few years have been calling it your client journey, which I am just not a woo-woo person. And so that does not appeal to me at all. I would much rather have it be a funnel. This is like a three-dimensional object. I can point to it and it doesn't hold any emotion. Like it's just, So how do you create a system for looking at all of your pieces at one time, kind of like what I was describing?
Absolutely. So I have here in Utah, there's a guy that has become pretty famous for a business example, but there's a guy here that he was young and he started a company called Love Sack.
Oh yeah.
So giant bean bags.
They're all over in Costco.
Yeah, they're huge.
Yeah.
Well, he started them and exploded the company. It was doing so well. And then he ran it right into bankruptcy. He's since rebuilt it. It's done really good. But I heard him talk about it, and he said, and this happens to all of us, he said, we got where we were doing so well, I was choked with opportunity.
Yes.
Right? There was so much. And so he decided one of the opportunities he was going to do was open up stores and malls and everything like that. And that turned out to be a really bad decision. And
I remember really seeing that.
Yeah, pulled the company down. But your question was like, how do we decide, when you have it all in front of you?
Yeah.
The biggest thing, going back to other books, another one called Centers of Gravity, the story of how the United States invaded Iraq and how they figured out, everything that we blew up in Iraq, we're going to have to pay for, right?
Right.
So they figured out how can we take out the power with the least amount of effort. And they realized that in Baghdad, there was two main generators and we could rebuild those for cheap. And so understanding to lay it out all in front of you, knowing that you probably are choked with opportunity. There's a million things you could be doing. But what is that power generator? What is the least amount of effort with the highest return reward?
Yeah.
And there's ways to do that. We can draw up a little quadrant thing and put these opportunities and put them in effort versus reward, and then really visually map it out for yourself and be like, I thought it was this, but I actually think it might be these 2 or 3 things that we should start on, especially within the next 2 weeks.
Well, and there's so many little offshoots from what you were just describing that I wanted to make a comment about. So number one, that answer is not going to be the same for everyone.
Oh no.
No. So, and that's where it comes in to sit down and do it yourself. So trying to Google this or trying to get like ChatGPT to give you this answer is not going to be correct for your law firm.
Oh, no.
Because it's the way you were describing this power, was it a power generator?
Just generators. Yep.
Yeah. It sounds so logical, but the strategy that had to go in to kind of sit down and think through what all the options are, what is going to create a bigger mess, what is going to be a distraction from what really works. I mean, all of these things, I just keep thinking about social media, especially for law firms. There's a lot of distraction techniques out there and a lot of people telling you that you need to be doing a lot of different things. And there are some firms that are having a little bit of success on different social media platforms. But there's also a lot of firms wasting a ton of time. And when you first
money
started,
and effort and everything, tons.
And when you first started this episode, we were talking about like stopping the waste. And so I think this all ties in, like find those power generators where you can just really targeted get to what's working. And then also don't be distracted by that other stuff. Like you stay the course.
Yeah.
So let's talk about how you did that with Casper's ice cream, because I know you've had this amazing success. It went from 5 million to 100 million plus, right? And I feel like that's probably like kind of old data, right? It's probably even more than that now.
Actually, this last year they just passed 150 million.
Nice. Okay, so tell us the story of that, how you did that.
Okay.
And specifically, like what did you do with the marketing that made that happen?
Absolutely. And I can get you down into the weeds a little bit for that.
Yeah, let's do it.
Casper's ice cream actually started in 1925, but in 85 they introduced the Fat Boy ice cream sandwich, which was a big hit. They were mostly like ice cream sundaes and things like that, almost all handmade stuff.
Is it like an ice cream shop, or is it stuff that's sold in like grocery stores?
Sold in grocery stores.
Okay, gotcha.
Yep. So its biggest competitors were like the M&M ice cream cookie sandwich.
Okay.
And then Klondike, not the Klondike bar, but Klondike has its own ice cream sandwich. And the Fat Boy is it's a sandwich that's like this big.
Okay.
It's thick.
Yeah.
So it's a Fat Boy. Yeah, exactly. So the problem that they faced was they had such a great following and everything like that, but the pockets that they had to compete against. When you talk about the owners of M&M, which is Mars,
yeah, and
then the owners of Klondike is Unilever, which is like one of the biggest food companies in the entire world.
Yeah,
it's like, how on earth do we outcompete them? They're truly Goliaths. And so what we did was through social media, and obviously in the food world, there's a little bit different than law firms, but there's, there's promo, which is like, putting it on sale and things like that.
Sure.
But the way that we beat the big guys was specifically with them was having fantastic social media, but like, what does that even mean? Fantastic social media. Yeah. What we actually did was took the great social media and the good ad creative and stuff that we did. And every time that the Fat Boy was put into a new store or a new chain, such as like Kroger or H-E-B in Texas or whatever, is we got all the addresses for every single store. And then we geo-targeted all of our paid social and outdoor, like Blip, like through using like Blip outdoor billboards and stuff like that.
Yeah.
Because one thing that all of us would admit is we grocery shop pretty much at the same place, and it's always close to where we live.
Yes.
And so we did tight geo-targeted advertising around every single store for years.
So smart. Talk about.
And it was super laborious, but it allowed us to just hunt with a rifle all the time. Exactly. And the people around there thought that Fat Boy was as big as these other ones because they saw it so often.
Talk about reducing waste too, because we see this a lot with SEO, where firms are going after this really broad net, and they think, that, more is better. And even before the recent GA4, it used to just be these top level numbers that firms were looking at. How many hits am I getting? And it's like, who cares? That
vanity,
is actually
vanity metrics.
Vanity metrics, but also like if you really are honest about it, it's a lot of waste. And so it's not even vanity stuff. It's like sometimes it's too big, and that's not good because it's not doing what it's supposed to be. So when you're doing
I'll say the principle behind, just to add to that point that you're making, the entire principle, it's not like I'm going to tell lawyers to do stuff around grocery stores, right?
Right.
But the principle behind it is we knew it wasn't important to be in front of every eyeball. Yes. It was important to be in front of the eyeballs of the people that were going into those stores. And, we're starting in the lead gen that we're doing for a law firm right now, is utilizing, now they're expensive tools and things like that. But they pay back in droves, is utilizing things like Zoom Info and things like that. Because if you're not a direct to consumer law firm, if you're business to business, like we're doing one that works with hospitals right now.
Yeah.
We're going right after the person within the hospital that they need to talk to. And so that's what's important. The entire principle of the whole Fat Boy thing is you need to make sure you know where your customer's eyeballs are, and you need to be in front of them.
That goes
eyes and ears.
Yes. That goes back to core marketing that my marketing professor in grad school used to say almost every night, which was be where they are, and he would talk a lot about that would be the first thing, whatever the case study was. And we're doing case studies across all different industries, but it was, okay, so this is a case study. These are, there was this whole case study about how Honda decided to create an elevated brand with Lexus Acura, right? And so, find out first, who are we talking to? We're not talking about the typical Honda buyer. We're not talking about the cheap, college student. Now if you're making kind of a little graph of who these clients are in terms of, what their price is that they're willing to pay versus what they want out of it, we're looking for a little pocket that is not being served by another brand. And then you want to own that. And you don't want to try to now sell your little pocket to some other part of the grid. You just stay in your little lane and own like this unique area that you're doing, but know who these are. Define that first. And this just keeps coming back to what we're talking about with strategy. You got to sit down and know that you're starting with your CMO. You're starting with the strategy, whoever that may be. Hopefully it's not the same person as your marketing director, because that person is just execution and that person is just doing the tactics. Yep. So, okay. So let's talk about how to, now you've got this strategy, you've got this plan, and you're, going back to really targeted results and a targeted audience. Now, how do you kind of make that work? What were some kind of lessons and mistakes that you made in the process of figuring all that stuff out?
Sure. I think, and today it has changed so drastically, right? So when we talk about, for instance, like lead generation and stuff like that, to where we can evolve such powerful tools now today that can automate so much of it. And you can carefully use AI to help you along the way a little bit. You don't want to lean on it completely. You'll lose fast because people can figure it out really quick.
Right. I like this where you're kind of comparing, because I know you've been doing this forever as well, as I have too. And
as my bald head attests to.
Well, I mean, I feel like we both go back to like Napster and Netscape days and HTML websites and all of that good stuff. So we've seen what it looked like before and then now what it looks like, because you're kind of suggesting like things have changed. So what did it used to look like? And then how are you doing it now, just because things have changed over time?
Yeah. I've been doing this long enough that we used to design a ton of like paper collateral.
Yes.
I mean, it was all about the meeting and the handshake and the beautiful trifold with cool folds and postcards, things that come out and tabs.
Mailing out postcards. Yeah.
Oh yeah, absolutely. And really, making that impression that way.
Yeah.
And then we had quite an evolution even before COVID. And I feel like there's been a massive evolution since COVID.
I do too. Yeah.
The comfort that people have just to do what you and I are doing, like to have a meeting on Zoom.
Yeah.
Most people would have thought that's silly.
Yeah, it doesn't work. It's not the same. Yeah.
I meet face to face.
Yeah. We are face to face.
Yes.
I don't know what pants you're wearing, but we're face to face.
That's right. I'm not standing up.
Yeah. Okay, good. Yeah, I don't want to know.
But to me, I think probably one of the most important things in all of marketing, and it kind of goes back to what you were talking about, funnel and the customer journey, is just understanding where your consumer is.
Yes.
And speaking to them. No one wants to be sold. And those things are all like really cliche, right?
Yes.
But the way that we talk to them digitally, through advertising, everything like that, the most important thing that we can do is to do enough research and enough homework on who they are and where they're going to be, that we can create. Probably the most powerful thing you can do as an advertiser is to say something that they've been saying to themselves inside and they've told no one.
And as a lawyer, you know what these things are.
You do.
You know what happens in those first few phone calls.
Yeah.
Where, depending on what your kind of law is, they're calling you sometimes in a desperate situation.
Yes.
And you know what that feels like when you have that conversation where they're desperate and you are like an ice pack. And all of a sudden they're like, okay, I feel like you've got me. And that is the gold right there. What is it that you say? What is it that they say that gets them through that hurdle? And that is what you need to write down over and over and keep refining. And it sounds so basic. It sounds like this is sort of preschool level stuff, but it's not. It's the stuff people are missing the most.
Do you want to know one of the most easy key ways that you could do to accomplish those? And
what?
Hardly anybody does it because they feel awkward doing it, and they definitely don't spend the time to go back. And that's just to record those.
Yes.
If you record your sales calls, you record your Zoom calls. And if you go back, Karim, you just touched on it a second ago, is that we think that everybody is so individual and we need to give them such a custom experience. And we will, right? All of our service will be very tailored and the law firm service will be very tailored.
Yeah.
But the situations that people are in are repeated. And they need to hear the same comforting things. They have the same fears, the same frustrations, And so that's where you need to find that pain. You need to find the pain, agitate it a little bit,
Yeah.
and then give them the solution.
And I would even say that it's a good sign when the situation is repeated, because that
Yes.
means people know you for a thing, and that they continue to come to you, or people are sending you referrals for that thing.
Yep.
And they keep repeating and kind of reiterating that you are the answer for
Yes.
that thing, whatever that thing is, whether it's you and I, who people are coming to because they know we have these marketing answers, or if you're a lawyer, it doesn't matter. But it's a good sign when your work starts to iterate.
And that's part of your goal within that plan that we talked about. Within 2 years, one of the plans you should have is whether it's, the founder of the firm or it's the top few partners or whatever, you should be making efforts to become thought leaders. And
yes,
and that's where they gain, like you're saying, they gain trust and expertise, or people gain trust for you from your expertise. But probably one of the worst things that I've ever done, and my social media networks for my company will show, is we've done amazing things. Like we just shared, one of the stories with Casper's.
Yeah.
But we've been hermits about it.
Yeah.
And so
I think that's the case with so many companies.
You do great work and tell no one.
Right. Because you get caught up in the work.
Yeah.
And so don't let that be the case. If you're noticing that, that's fine. Obviously, it's good to be busy.
Yes.
It's fine to be busy. I didn't mean to say it's fine to let that stuff go, because it's not fine to let it go.
Yeah.
But find a way to have some system for promotion and getting your message out there, and, kind of, patting yourself on the back and getting it out there publicly.
Yeah, you can't. And that's the biggest changes that we've made too, is in changing that. But when you talk about being a lawyer or a doctor or anything like that, I mean, you don't really have time to be the engine of that.
You shouldn't.
You have to find. Yeah, you shouldn't. Yeah, if you do, then you're probably in the part where you're like, I should have been doing it for years.
Exactly.
And we're in trouble, right?
Yeah.
So you need to find, you said it perfect. There needs to be a system. There needs to be an engine that's doing it for you.
Yeah. Okay, so let's dive into the Thought Leaders Library. We have built an incredible collection of game-changing books recommended by all of our guests on the show. So, Joby, if you had to choose one essential read for every lawyer, what would it be?
It would be The Road Less Stupid.
I love this.
Yeah. First of all, the title, I mean, good for them. What a great job of creating the title.
Nice hook.
Yes, exactly. And you know what? Forgive me.
It
Author
is Keith Cunningham.
There we go. Keith Cunningham.
Yeah.
Thank you.
I wrote that one down because otherwise I will not remember. Yeah.
How many of you, like when you go to work out in the morning or whatever, or go for a walk or whatever, realize so many times before I go to work out, I'm like, I don't have time to do this. I don't have time to go. I don't want to. Of course we don't want to.
Yeah.
But it's so easy to be like, I have so much due today and there's so much to do. You know what? I'm just going to skip it. I'm going to work hard and I'll do it at night. But then we're exhausted and we don't do it right.
It doesn't happen. Yeah.
But what Keith proposes, and does more than propose, he gives you absolute action items, is we don't actually spend enough time thinking. And when we go to work out or we go on a walk and we think about all these problems that are facing us, we come back refreshed and energized because we've had time to think about it. And he's like, one of the reasons that your life just continues to like plateau and is because you don't spend enough time quietly thinking through problems.
Yes.
And so he gives, he just says, you got to structure your day so that there's thinking time within every day.
Yeah.
And then what he does is go through each chapter. He covers like a topic, and then he gives you like, I don't know, 10 to 12 different topics to think through and write notes on.
Yeah.
And
I love this for so many reasons.
So powerful.
I feel like earlier in the show, I talked about not being a woo-woo person.
Yes.
But this is actionable woo-woo. Like this is like, first of all, the first thing I was thinking when you were describing this is my least liked class in grad school was operation design. But we talked about the thing I took away from that class was, because it was a lot about like factories and how to run a factory.
I know exactly about.
So
I remember it was terrible.
But what I took away from that is that even a factory and a machine cannot run at 100%. It just can't. It's going to, it's not built for that. It's built to run at like 80, 90%. And it needs the rest. And this is a machine we're talking about. Like we are human animals and we cannot run at 100%. And not only that, like, first of all, your body's just going to shut down and tell you need to rest. It'll force you. And we all know it gets sick. Like you and I are both coughing through this episode. But the other side is there's no space for growth. So however woo-woo you want to be, let's just talk about growth. Like if you are running your day at 100%, maintaining just, what today requires, you're not thinking about tomorrow. You're not thinking about your 2-year, plan and all that. So there's no space for anything other than what it is now. So,
exactly right.
Pretty soon today is going to be, like that whole compound inflation thing you learn in high school. Pretty soon today is going to be behind. Like, you're not even keeping up with inflation for growth. So you have to build in space for growth or you're going to start falling behind. My old CEO said, if you're not growing, you're failing. Like there's no like maintaining. So you've got to have that space in your life, in your day, and just your physical health for growth. And that sounds so good. I have not read this book. This is this is always
here. I'll
rare
even
for
share.
me.
So I've got all my notes from one of the days, and one of them was, which hats do you wear?
Yeah.
The first one was, which hats have been my comfort zone? And I put, I'm comfortable being the visionary, the designer, and the all-knowing guy, right?
Yeah.
Which hats aren't getting worn enough? The CEO.
Yeah.
The CFO.
Yep.
The mentor, the teacher, the captain calmly at the helm. I'm always just like, the fire, put out her.
Yes.
I'll take care of it. I'll be the hero.
Right.
And so on and so forth. Which hats do I not even own? How can I acquire or prove them? So like, that was just one day, right? And like, that's a good 30 minutes of sitting there and just thinking through all those things.
That's amazing. The last thing I was going to add is, have you read Strengths Finder? It used to be by Gallup, and I think somebody else took it over. But the idea of those hats, and it's sort of this personality test. You take this big, long kind of test, and it finds your strengths. But the goal with this book is not to like build up your weaknesses. It's to set those aside. So with that list of which hats are you not wearing, my first reaction would be, okay, so how do I delegate and how do I get someone else? Because clearly if I'm not getting it done, there's something in some reason. Maybe I don't even need to know what it is. I just need to get it off my plate. So maybe I just hate doing it. Maybe I just can't get to it. Whatever the reason, who cares? Like take the emotion out of it and hand it over to somebody else. Because it's better than to get it done than to have it just sitting on your list for another day.
And that was literally the next day's notes.
Nice.
Is going through the delegation. You take those hats and you're like, okay, well, and if there's ones that I should be owning, like that I owe to my company and my employees, then I need to wear that one and delegate one of the other ones that I like that one, right?
That sounds fun.
Okay, but you got 2 other people that are great at that in your company. Let them take that
get it done
and do the stuff you need to be doing to help grow.
Exactly.
Yep.
Okay, so Joby, what's the first thing? We're at the actionable items part of the show. So after someone has listened to this episode, what is the first actionable thing that they should think about or do in terms of everything we've been talking about?
Well, I would say for growth and speaking, this is obviously to law firms and things like that. I think one of the things you need to do is I think you need to get on a whiteboard. And I think you need to map out all your competition and where you sit within the market with those competition, right? So maybe you could I would create 2 axes. Maybe one is like lesser known and well known, or maybe like household name and unknown, right?
Okay.
And the other one maybe the other one could just be like price, right? Like cheap and down and dirty lawyer and like, high end firm within your service area, right? I mean,
sure.
It doesn't need to be every law firm that services everything, but if you're an accident lawyer or if you're a malpractice lawyer, then let's talk about the malpractice lawyers.
Yeah.
Map out where you feel like your competition is, and you have to be really, really honest here, right?
Yeah.
Because a lot of people don't want to say, well, they're a little bigger than us, or then maybe they do this a little better than we do, because everybody's like, we do it best. Like, well,
take your ego out of it.
Yes. Map them all out, and then really take a look, and then put yourself on there where you are now, not where you think you are or where you should be,
what your mom thinks.
That was really interesting to do with Fat Boy Ice Cream, because, right, they wanted to kind of be like, well, we're a high premium ice cream. And you're like, are you though? Because you're value priced.
What do people think when they walk into the grocery store? What do they think about
you?
Not what does your mom think?
They don't grab a box of Fat Boy thinking they're getting Haagen-Dazs.
Right.
They're getting a box of Fat Boys to stick in the freezer so that the kids and everybody and things like that. So they wanted to make a little bit of a move towards premium so that they could raise the price a little. So once you make that map, put yourself on it.
Yeah.
And then look at where your competition is and see where there's white space.
Yes.
And then say, okay, we can make a move from here to here. So like if, for instance, let's say if this is the middle one and you're just under medium priced, right? And you're a little bit unknown, you have to say, okay, well, we want to move into this area that's white where we're quite a bit more well-known and a little bit higher price, right?
Yep.
I know that kind of sounds generic, but you'll figure it out.
Right.
But you're going to have to say, okay, well, what does it take to move us from here to here? It's going to take ad dollars. It's going to take getting in front of eyeballs. Yep. It's going to take changing your pricing structure.
Yep.
And in order to change pricing structure, what does that mean in your sales process, in your consulting process?
Yes.
So that when somebody comes in expecting this much of a fee and they're presented with this much, like you either have the wrong person in front of you because you've been doing the wrong marketing, or you have to like graduate them to pay more. And so that's, to me, that's what you could do immediately after this podcast is go get on that whiteboard and say, we're here. Here's where everybody else is. And here's where I want to be. Yeah. And then you got to have to figure out to go from here to here.
Yes.
Yeah. And that's where you need a CMO.
Exactly. Yeah. Because what I was going to say next is here's what I didn't hear you say is slap up a website and cross your fingers. Yeah. And that is where a lot of people are coming in thinking, what, having a website doesn't work. And I'm like, what are you doing with your website? How is that working? And how does that fit into your plan? And they're like, what do you mean? It's like, okay, well, having a website is not the answer. That's not a plan. That's part of a plan. Yeah. And it should include a lot of other pieces in terms of like how you're going to change the website, what's going to happen on the website. It's not just this static thing that a lot of firms used to think. Do this website project and then if you build it, they will come. No, it's not. That is not how it works.
Nobody even knows it exists.
Yeah. No. So that is not the plan. And I do think that back in the day, way back when we were first, you and I were first doing this, there was an element of that, that where people could put a website up and Google would find it. And there was a certain amount of ease to that. That is just not how it is anymore. So you've got to kind of put that in the past and stop thinking that you have this God-given right to traffic. It doesn't work that way. So
you have to know that your competition have experts.
Yes.
And in fact, one of the first things they're going to do, if you have any name recognition or any prominence at all, one of the first things they're going to do is they're going to buy your name in search and everything like that, so that they can steal people that were trying to find you.
Yeah. That happened to me so many times when I started Googling my own name, not the name of my company, but my name. Other firms were bidding on my name. Yeah.
That means you're a superstar,
it
Karen.
pissed me off. Yeah, I know. It is.
There you go. You've made it. You've made it. Congratulations.
Exactly. That sounds like one of those things your mom would say when, when my little sister would copy me, and it's like, I don't want to be flattered in that way. That is rude.
Yeah, it just makes you mad.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Awesome. Okay, Joaby Parker is the founder and CEO of Cover 3 Creative. This was such a fun conversation. I feel like there was so much good strategy there, but also definitely check out this book, The Road Less Stupid. That sounds like a really quality, some good tips and process and all of that stuff.
Yeah, but for any business owner, no matter what industry.
Exactly. Sounds super good. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you for listening to this episode of the CounselCast podcast. Be sure to visit our website at counsel-cast.com for the resources mentioned on the episode and to give us your feedback. If you enjoyed this episode, I would appreciate if you could rate and review the podcast on Apple and subscribe to your favorite podcast platform. See you on the next one.